So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to this webinar, Reducing Supply Chain Costs and Driving Value with a Hybrid B2B Integration Platform. My name is Aruna Kandhai and I will be the moderator today. So let's continue with the agenda of today. We will start with the introduction, highlighting the current state of supply chain collaboration. Continuing with value creation and moving towards a scalable hybrid integration landscape with Quyntess interchange services. Continued with a case study, how a pan-European supplier of products for the professional building industry and the do-it-yourself retail channels accelerates customer collaboration and infuses acquisitions with KISS. And at the end of the webinar, of course, we will have the Q&A session. I would like to continue by introducing today's speakers. A very warm welcome, Manpreet Sachdeva, Integration Solution Specialist, and Rob van Ipenburg, Managing Partner at Quyntess, and of course also known as a supply chain collaboration evangelist. Continuing with the first topic, Rob, I will hand over the word to you.
All right, many thanks, let's say Aruna. Let me start with the brief introduction of the sponsor of this session, Quyntess. Give you a brief overview of the company profile. So the company was founded in 2004. It's an independent provider of supply chain management solutions with a clear focus on integration and collaboration. We'll be talking mostly about integration during this webinar, but it's tightly related to collaboration. And that's what I, let's say, would like to make visible to you with the picture of the two objects on the left-hand side. Both of them are actually perfectly fitted to the human hand. One of them, however, was made 70,000 years ago by one single person for one single purpose, and the other one has the same shape but is actually used as a tool by many people today, but we don't even know how many people are involved in creating that product. But that really is, let's say, the movement of, I would say, one single person creating one thing and making progress on his own, compared to the collaboration, which is the essence of supply chain management and the creation of wealth, I would say, and a new type of possibilities today. And that requires integration and collaboration. There's a very interesting TEDx session available, created by Matt Ridley. If I tell you the title of it, you'll certainly remember it. It's called When Ideas Have Sex. And I'll really, let's say, recommend that you watch that to understand what really collaboration and supply chain is actually, let's say, meaning to this all. So this is really what we're focusing on. Second point, let's say, if we try to see, well, how does that supply chain collaboration, let's say, relate to the let's say to the challenges that companies face with today, is that you see that as an effect of that, businesses are reliant on the networks of their partners more and more. We see increasing complexity of those networks because companies want to enter new markets. They have mergers and acquisitions. Supply chains are becoming more and more global, and thus also the number of business partners and subsidiaries is increasing. Secondly, there's an accelerated, let's say, speed of business because, let's say, new products are launched, let's say, faster, new services are launched faster, but we also change partners, get new customers, change suppliers, and those type of things, which puts, let's say, additional requirements upon the onboarding and even offboarding of the partners, let's say, that we have with changing market conditions as we have today. The third trend, I think, is, let's say, the requirement for instant access to information. And with instant access to information, we're talking about real-time collaborations in supply chains. If we rely more on our partners, because we focus on our core competence and we use the core competence of our partners to collaborate, creating new products, the synchronization of that information, the proactive alerting, but also the development like other integration capabilities like the Internet of Things, integrating with RFID technology, knowing where your container is, knowing where a truck is, that, let's say, becomes, let's say, more and more important today. So that's actually, let's say, where this reliance and this reliability on the network of partners, let's say, increases ever more with these global trends.
In fact, that is interesting. But how are these changing trends impact? What kind of challenges these changing trends are posing in terms of B2B integration?
Okay, well, if we translate those trends to B2B integration, we see that traditionally in B2B integration is quite a capital intensive type of thing. You need hardware, software, people in order to manage all this integration infrastructure. And that's a challenge, of course, if you need to increase the pace of that. Furthermore, there's more complexity because the relationships are not that stable anymore, so you need to onboard more new partners, let's say, in a faster way. And because those partners are located in different geographies, could it be Latin America, could be Asia, you also see a proliferation of different message types and communication types, and also requirements to support that 24/7 around the clock because people work in other time zones. So let's say that's also another integration challenge if you want to run that as a company. Furthermore, that means that there's more uncertainty about integration cost because the partners that you have today are not necessarily the partners that you have in a few months, for example, and setting up and maintaining all these connections may not be the most effective use of your internal IT resource, let's say, on these projects, because they basically caught up doing these things and they cannot do other projects, like there are always many projects to do within a company. So those are typically, let's say, a couple of the main integration challenges, which of course begs the question, how do we move from A to B? And if you look at the traditional way of integration, what you see is that we integrate from our company to a customer, to another customer, and yet, let's say, to another supplier. So it's, let's say, a multifold of one-to-one relationships in that area. Whereas, in fact, what we would like to have is that we can collaborate with everybody at the same time. So this very simple, I would say, picture in this way, how is it translated right now to an architecture? At the architecture level, let's say what we try to achieve is that instead of creating a network of one-to-one relationships, let's say with the partners in the network, if we look at our own company or our customer, typically you see this on the picture, let's say on the left-hand side, let's say there is let's say the 9 o'clock level, you see your business. And by connecting to Quyntess interchange services once with this unique arrow, you actually, let's say, reach and connect all the different parties, which could be, let's say, physical parties in the supply chain, such as a logistics service provider, or a customer, or a supplier, but it could also be a government, for example, for exchanging tax compliant information on invoices, or it could be an external system like a web shop or a platform on which you're publishing, let's say, other content. So let's say that's really, let's say, a multitude of channels, let's say, to reach in that area. And you can use that for one individual message type, but also, let's say, to execute, let's say, more like a process, like an order to cash process with, for example, orders, order responses, dispatch advices, and invoices all following suit.
So what are the key characteristics of Quyntess interchange services in this respect?
The key characteristics, I think you can summarize it in two main blocks. One, of course, is actually, let's say, I would call it the hard technological side of it. We have a multi-tenant stack of servers, communication servers, which is, let's say, high availability, has integration engines, has security around it, which otherwise, I would say, companies would need to replicate on their own end to achieve the same stability. So that's a certain, I would say, economies of scale that we provide because we are working with this platform for multiple customers. I call it multi-tenant because actually each tenant will, of course, have full security and will only have the information of his own network with his own partners, which is completely separated, let's say, from an IT perspective from the network, let's say, of the other parties. And we operate this, let's say, in that respect as a private network, so to speak, on behalf of the customer. The second component, apart from the technical side, is really the managed service side. So what we try to accomplish is to take away the burden of the constant integration and modification with the business partners and provide it really as a service, which goes from the front end of the process, the onboarding and the offboarding of the partners, but also includes, let's say, the management, staff support, program management, technical experts, supervising those type of things, so that under a service level agreement, the customer can have peace of mind that we keep this running on his behalf, let's say 24/7. So those two things are actually the main components of KISS. Which, let's say, I think would take me to say, well, how is it related then to the business world? We can connect partners for a company in different ways. We can connect to them directly if they have their own EDI infrastructure, or if they have their own enterprise service bus or their own ERP system. But in quite frequent cases, we see that business partners are already using either an integration tool or an integration service provider, and those type of things. Which comes actually, let's say, to the question is like, there are different, let's say, types of networks. And over the past years, is what we have seen, at least with our customers, is that a number of these networks have clustered together by mergers and by acquisitions, all with the drive to become the biggest network with the largest number of partners. Eventually, this has reached the stage that there are now a number of giants, let's say, available, let's say, in that area, but it also creates like different power blocks. And if you're part of one power block, you're not necessarily communicating very well with the other power block. We try to invert, let's say, that way of thinking by choosing an interoperability play. So rather than working with proprietary standards and attract as many people to the biggest and the most beautiful network that we have, say we already take it as a fact that people are already on different networks, and let's play it on interoperability so that it's as easy as possible to connect to any partner on any network without imposing on that partner the need to come to the network of our choice, whatever that choice, let's say, is, in that area. So we really, let's say, have an interoperability play, and it plays to our core message, come as you are, which means actually that the business partner needs to adapt as little as possible.
So that means you're not trying to be big, but you're trying to be interoperable so that you can communicate with existing partners of the business partners.
Yes, and some of these platforms that are mentioned on this picture, we are connected already for, let's say, or our customers are connected already through Quyntess interchange services to all these different platforms. And that's, I think, actually, let's say, a big benefit if you want to achieve a situation where you can really connect all the different partners as much as possible without convincing them to come to your network, right, without putting any names, or I don't want to put any names like on which platform they would come to, but I think you can imagine, let's say, what would be the requirement, let's say, in that area. So, which is, let's say, how do we achieve that, and what are the key differentiators, let's say, that allow us to do that? When we thought about this, let's say, coming from the previous age that I just explained in that picture, and having worked with that for quite a few years ourselves, we said, let's say, okay, well, if you look at the world today, we should make a rather bold move. And we selected to make a strategic choice for open standards and for open source. That means, let's say, that for our customers, let's say that we can build an open ecosystem and an open network that seamlessly interacts actually, let's say, with the business partners and with the customers and with the different constituents in the supply chain. We leverage, let's say, reusable assets, of course, let's say, adapters that we have built, specific partner maps, specific security protocols, but we use a neutral format and not a proprietary format in the middle, which is UBL, also known as Universal Business Language, and there are thousands of companies and scientific people contributing all the time, let's say, to that, let's say, to that standard. And so that's an open standard. We also, because we built this on open source software, have a unique reversibility option. That means, let's say, that everybody who is using that same open source software himself, he can actually, let's say, integrate directly, and he could actually take the content that we have developed for him in-house. So what we really try to achieve with that is that we really provide a service. So we don't want to be known with our customers that yes, well, they've chosen for Quyntess interchange services and that's why they need to stay with us for 10 years. No, that they need to want to stay for us, let's say, for the service that we provide, the level of, I would say, taking away of responsibilities, the ownership that we provide, the service level agreement, and not because they are locked in actually to a network. So that's the play that we are putting forward, and so far I would say our customers have reacted very favorably to that. We have been able to attract a number of customers that had the rough edges of being integrated to a system where they were locked into their integration service providers, and they really see that this really works for them and actually, let's say, increases the adoption of the business partners in the network. So translating that a little bit further, we put in the title slide of this webinar the term hybrid. And hybrid is a buzzword at this point in time in supply chain integration. So how does that translate, let's say, to hybrid? Well, I can summarize it with the two pictures over here. So on the left-hand side, you see the traditional picture where you have the enterprise, the customer company, which may have different subsidiaries on the left-hand side again, like at the 9 o'clock level, that needs to integrate, let's say, first of all, his subsidiaries, typically on an enterprise application integration platform, also called an enterprise service bus, where he connects his internal systems and processes, and then makes connections from that point to all the different parties, actually, let's say, that are in the supply chain. The hybrid part that we can achieve with this is that he does not need to make one-to-one connections with his external, let's say, business partners alone through this Quyntess interchange services, as we've previously explained. He can actually, let's say, leverage this infrastructure also to provide part of the integration with his internal supply chain. So take, for example, a scenario where you have an acquisition of a new division or an acquisition of another company. So rather than waiting to have that division integrated into your EAI stack, so to speak, and having that company integrated with its ERP systems, you could also put part of that EAI capability outside your own firewall and have that role played out by Quyntess integration services, which is the yellow, let's say, piece of the pie there, the orange piece of the pie that you see in the middle circle on the left-hand side of the picture. This can accelerate to a large extent the integration of such a subsidiary, which means that your time to benefit increases to a large extent, because you can start to cross-sell, for example, each other products to the same customers right from the start, or you can leverage we'll say your procurement spend because you're using the same suppliers right from the start, and you don't need to wait until you've actually, let's say, integrated these companies or put them on the same ERP system, which is very often the case, let's say, or what you want to achieve, let's say, in the longer term. The same thing can be used also in a scenario the other way around. We like to think acquisitions, but also divestments take place. So this means, let's say, that if a division would be divested, it can continue to run its content with its business partner on this platform and maintain its individual connection. And it's not like when it's disconnected from the mothership, so to speak, it needs to rebuild all its business-to-business integration. So it has, let's say, a continuation of service and a continuation of business, let's say, in that area. So that means via hybrid model you are trying to take the burden related to the integration of the company, and you can take care of all the things related to that. Yes, and of course people can use this in a flexible way, because they could still have a strategy to say, well, we have an SAP rollout strategy, and in 2 or 3 years the subsidiary will be on the same instance of SAP because that's our blueprint. But then you don't need to wait for the 2-3 years in order to start reaping the benefits of the supply chain collaboration and the supply chain integration. Few other hybrid features, just to briefly mention, let's say, in there, is like using this outsourcing model. Let's say we reduce the complexity, which is, let's say, introduced with different partners, let's say, from the outside world. And of course, there's another way of reducing complexity for yourself is by imposing a standard upon someone. If you are a very powerful company, you can reduce the complexity on your end by imposing a standard, right? And that's what people have typically done in the retail business, let's say, for example. We think, let's say, that right now adoption of B2B processes and integration is becoming much more important at this point in time. And by actually providing this come as you are model while reducing the complexity, because you still have a single connection, there actually the acceptance and the penetration of B2B rapidly increases in that scenario. So that's also, let's say, a hybrid feature. The second hybrid feature we will not go into big detail upon today, but let's say is that we also provide capability to not only communicate via EDI and electronic channels, but deliver this same content also through web portal and mobile applications, so that partners that are not able to execute all of the business processes fully electronically, they could provide this partially, let's say, through any other integration channel, either through a mobile application or on a portal itself. So that's also a hybrid, let's say, type of communication, while of course on the customer end it will always be fully electronic regardless of what the source is. And the last point that I would like to mention over here is that actually, let's say, we have this hybrid part. It also means, let's say, there's a choice between putting this onshore and offshore, so to speak. Of course, we like people to use our service and to use our service, let's say, as much as possible. But if there are strategic choices to be made at some point in time, the customer can be confident that he can take the content that we have developed for his business partners and run this, let's say, and run this for himself, which, you know, I think, let's say, is an important assurance, because in other business networks that's not really the case. If you leave the network, you leave your connectivity and you let your content go, and you need to create that all from scratch again, which is also a business continuity risk, let's say, to some extent. Last point that I would like to bring forward is, let's say, in this hybrid, let's say, integration approach, is the importance of the acceleration of the implementation and the onboarding of partners. We already mentioned it as part of the key challenges to businesses, let's say, today. Let's say, how can you integrate these partners faster, better, and let's say with less effort, let's say, on your own hand. We do that in different ways, partially by accelerating the implementation, using, of course, let's say, the intellectual property, the maps, and all the standard processes that we have already, let's say, on the available on the platform today, and using standards and canonical formats as much as possible. Also, because we provide this come-as-you-are approach, the partner does not need to change anything. We're not imposing anything. The only question that we're asking him is, what are you using today? And please provide some evidence of what you are using. So sample files, for example, and those type of things. From there on, for him, is actually, let's say, no burden involved, and he does not need to comply with any specific, let's say, standards or obligations from that perspective. Because we do this as a business and creating this connectivity, we also have some fairly sophisticated onboarding portals to allow to monitor this process and to provide, let's say, visibility on this, including things like a central repository for message specification, test results, automating tests with the business partners, and those type of things, which make it a smooth process to onboard the processes. And that's not necessarily so easy to replicate for an individual IT department or EDI department to do that only does this from time to time. And one of the last point that I would like to mention is a very important principle. Quyntess Interchange Services will never charge any fees to the partner. And you've seen the picture with the different network slides. That's not necessarily always the case. There are quite a few networks and partners that maybe at first sight look cheap or not so expensive, but because they also charge fees not only on the sending side or the receiving side, but also to the sending side of the information, actually they collect money, let's say, from both sides. And that, of course, especially for someone that's already on another platform, could be a hurdle to adoption, because he's already paying his own integration service provider, and now to do business with this integration service provider, he needs to pay again. And you can see that reduces the acceptance of business-to-business integration. So that's why it's a very fundamental principle to never charge any fees, let's say, to the business partner. At the end of the day, evangelized a lot right now and told you why we are all doing this, but that we are still a business. So how does the business model work? I want to make that very clear to everybody. Well, the business model is based on unit-based pricing and a pay-as-you-save model. What we mean with that is that we don't ask you to put money up front in order to make a dream happen. No, actually, let's say make our goals the goals of our customers, which is making as many processes electronic as they possibly can, and only pay for that if we are successful. So we are on the same side of the table as the customer. If they are more successful automating these processes, the level of fees will increase, and they will not need to pay for that up front. So that falls apart into 4 different things. One is if it is actually to subscribe to a flexible plan. So when they have new partners, they basically provide us the list of the new partners, let's say, that they would like to interface with. There must be, of course, let's say, some commitment at that level, at least. Then we have, let's say, a fee model which is based on the number of processes that we automate. I think you can imagine that if we just automate electronic invoices, the process is simpler and the benefits are also smaller than if we automate a full procure-to-pay process, including forecast information, order information, delivery information. So if you have more and more of these processes, there's a fee per process to actually connect it to the back-end system. And secondly, the second axis of this model is actually the number of business partners that is connected. I think you can imagine that the larger supply chain with more business partners automated, we actually, let's say, will need to charge more fees because we still need to maintain more connections than if you have 1 or 2 or 3 business partners, let's say, in that area. But it's very scalable, very transparent, and very easy for one of our customers to create a business case around it because he knows how much business he does with that partner and if it's worthwhile to automate that process. Lastly, we offer some premium service level agreements, for example, allowing customers to opt to run this in a private cloud or to have extended staff support 24/7, or to provide, let's say, some high volume capabilities, specifically very high volume capabilities as a special additional service. So those things are very transparent, and the customer actually always knows in advance what he's getting himself into. So from my perspective, that would be initial summary of the market developments and, let's say, how this hybrid platform actually tries to deliver the value to the customers. I think it would be about time, more or less, to go to a more concrete example how that is actually applied in practice.
Yes,
and I would like to ask you to talk one of the projects that you've been involved in and make it, let's say, a little bit more tangible, how it really works out in a practical case study.
Thank you, Rob. So now I'll be covering the case study of one of our client and how Quyntess helped them achieve their goals. This client of ours is one of the market leader in manufacturing products for building industries, and it caters to DIY retail as well as professional builders. It's a very international client which is based out of headquartered at Holland, but which has production plants in countries like France, Romania, Poland, and 25 sales offices. Now, before this client started working with Quyntess, I would say they had more of an integration model and not collaboration model. So they had like an EDI service provider in the middle, and they were at that time talking to 9 external customers, but having one-to-one connection, not very traditional in that sense. And at that time, they were they were getting only 15% of their line items via EDI. Now, this model was okay as per their business requirement at that time, but in recent years, because of change in corporate strategy, they went into the expansion modes via mergers and acquisitions. And when we talk about mergers and acquisitions, that means more IT complexity in terms of integrating the new subsidiaries that you're going to buy, how are they going to talk to your main backend system, and those kind of complexities they saw. At that time, they thought of having a system that is going to help them achieve the following goals. They wanted a system that was they wanted to reach a level where they can have 80% of their line items to be transmitted via EDI from the present level of 15%. So with this kind of target, they were looking for a scalable system that can help them achieve this target in future. Also, because of the mergers and acquisition, they wanted a system that's going to accelerate the group's expansion policy and not retard it. That is, it's going to help them in integrating these new subsidiaries and business partners. They also wanted a flexible system that can talk to any business partner and shouldn't be limited as per the formats or communication channels of these business partners, and should be flexible enough. They also eventually wanted to migrate the partners the customers they have from the old system to this new system. And when EDI is involved, it means business is involved, and they wanted to migrate it with zero impact on the business, so minimize risk when they migrate from the old system to the new one. Along with that, they wanted an efficient system, that is, they don't want to, when they are going to have a new business partner, they don't want to spend majority of the time on onboarding. Instead, an onboarding should be efficient, and then the important time should be spent on the other important activities related to having this new business partner working with them. And obviously they wanted to exchange documents as per the SLA agreed. So with these high level of goals set up, I'll now explain you how Quyntess hybrid model helped them achieve the goal. Now, this company had business requirements that was conventional as well as non-conventional. So in the conventional business requirement, they wanted to talk to their external customer, getting the orders for them, sending responses in a conventional, the traditional way. But also the non-conventional, where they can they can communicate with their subsidiaries, they can integrate the data with their subsidiaries which are not on the same SAP backend system as they had. So as you can see in this slide, the Quyntess simplified this whole process. So now they don't need to talk to all the business partner and subsidiaries via one-to-one connection. They just need to have one connection to Quyntess Interchange Services, and then Quyntess Interchange Services is going to take care of these connections to various business partners. Now, Quyntess Interchange Services, they work on ESB principle. So ESB principle helps enterprise service bus principle. It helps us connect to various servers like AS2, X400, HTTP, Mail, SFTP, and many more. So this gives us liberty of being able to communicate to various business partners and via any communication mode that they might be using. So that's very helpful in that sense. Now I shall be covering Quyntess cloud architecture a little bit more in detail. Now, as you can see in this slide, we have a Quyntess interchange system in the center, and it's we have in Quyntess interchange system we work on model in which we have a middle UBL standard. Why do we have it? I'm going to cover it later, but this intermediary UBL standard, intermediary standards, they're used to decouple the ERP and business partner profile. As you can see in the picture, the ERP profile we call, when we connect to the backend system of the customer, we call it a ERP profile, but when we can connect to the business partner, we call it a business partner profile. Now, the middle standard, we always, the meaning of middle standard is that whatever data, whatever format the data we are getting in, it's going to get converted into the middle, intermediary standard, and then to the destination standard. Now, why this UBL standard in the middle? It helps us to decouple the ERP profile and business partner profile. That means these two, if we are going to change anything in the ERP profile, we are not going to impact the business partner profile, and obviously if we are going to change the business partner profile, we are not impacting ERP profile. So that means we are simplifying our onboarding process. That means if tomorrow you are getting more business partners, you see more business partners joining in your integration platform, you're not impacting the ERP profile, so the business can go on, and you keep on adding the new partners. And obviously the simplification, it's more efficient also. In fact, the UBL standard in the middle, it not only solves these purposes, but it also caters to special needs of our customers. Like if I give you an example of this client, they wanted to receive the summary of invoice of all the invoices that they receive in the week. So when you talk of all the invoices received during a week, that means we are talking about various different formats. We receive invoices in various different formats. Now, if I have to extract data to provide this summary in the PDF format, I have to extract data from all these invoices. Now, if I have to extract data from all these different formats, you can imagine it's not only efficient, it's time consuming, it's not robust. So now I have a UBL standard in the middle, so all the formats are already translated into the UBL, and now after that I extract the data from this UBL standard, put in the database, and then send the PDF. So you can see this not only is working as a decoupling, but also helping us in the various non-conventional needs that a business might have. In the Quyntess interchange model, it works on almost all common market standards like VDA, OData, X12, EDFACT, and as well as non-custom standards.
But what does it mean? Like if a customer would have something, let's say, come as you are, if you take it to the extreme, he has a homegrown, let's say, system that somebody has specifically built for him. Is it then, and it is not part of this GUSI and this ODET and this list that you have. So how does it work then for such a customer?
We do have these kind of customers right now also on our system who don't follow the market standard, and they have. We normally get we work with them. We normally get the specification guide and the sample files, and then we develop the mapping specification. We are not just limited by the market standards, but we work on the customized XML or any other formats that you might have.
Okay, so there's no limitation.
There's no limitation in terms of formats. I named few, but obviously there are many more in the list that I couldn't add here. So now talking about the operations in Quyntess interchange. You as a client have liberty to you'll have a transparency in terms of seeing all the transactions that you might be exchanging with your business partners or your subsidiaries via a very secure web Quyntess interchange monitoring tool that we offer. You can not only monitor, as you can see in the screenshot, this is just one screenshot of how the Quyntess interchange monitoring tool looks like. So now you can not only see the data, you can download the files, you can sort the data as per sender, recipient, or you can download it into Excel and whatever you want to do. I mean, this gives you liberty to have those kind of things. So Quyntess interchange system, it's not just an integration tool. It's a collaboration partner that is going to help. That is in fact helping this client to achieve the preset goals as we talked about when we started this case study. Now, as you can see, the results so far that we have received with this KISS model, hybrid model, when we started with this project, we went live with our first partner within 5 weeks, which, since I've worked in this industry for long, it's quite remarkable when you include so many processes involved in getting live. So we went live within 5 weeks with the first partner, and eventually, with the good success rate, we migrated the external customers that were there on their old system to our new Quyntess interchange system within 3 months with zero impact on the business. No impact on the business, and we were able to migrate. It was in fact very impressive.
So why didn't you start with the migration first then?
When this, as we remember, the company started thinking of getting a new system when they went into the expansion mode. So for them, the critical point was to migrate, to have the new business partners integrated into their system. They already had the system which was running okay and able to manage the old partners. So that was low in priority because that system was already running fine.
Okay.
So that's why then they So we went live. We were able to migrate all those customers to our new system, to our new KISS system within 3 months with no impact. And now they are not only earlier with the old system and one-to-one connection, they had limited processes. Now they've extended their capability in terms of new processes that they have added. It's not like just orders, auto responses. They have dispatch advices, invoices, and many more to come in future. So this is not only in terms of processes, not only in terms of external customers, like after we have already integrated 3 of their subsidiaries who are not using SAP as their backend system, and now they are able to communicate and talk to the SAP backend system of our client via the hybrid KISS model that we have proposed. And I think we started this project a year before. This project had not been a single go live project. We went, because of the expansion policy of this client, we went live over, I think, 7 batches, and I think now we are like 60 plus processes with new customers are already connected to their system, which is, I would say, quite impressive.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, so
I think so too. That's a busy schedule to complete that within 1 year.
Yes, and I hope we are going to continue the same trajectory in future also. So now I shall hand over to Aruna for rest of the presentation.
Yes, thank you very much, Manpreet and Rob, for the very clear indication here. I think it's time to move to the Q&A session that we proposed earlier. So all the participants, you're allowed to ask any questions. Microphones are unmuted now, so if there are any questions, remarks, comments, please ask them via microphone, or we can also welcome you to pose all those questions via chat. I would also like to mention, for those participants who are not able to join us during the Q&A session, you are also allowed to reply via email on the documentation that we will send you afterwards. So please, if there are any questions, feel free to come up with them.
As we have some time, Aruna, let's say, for people to ask their questions, would you want to introduce the poll?
Yes, I think that's a good one. We have a question as well for you as a participant. We have listed 9 key benefits as we perceive them to be a benefit. What would be your key benefit to work with a B2B integration platform like Quyntess Interchange Services? Please have a look at the 9 bullet points, and we would request you to submit your answer, actually the number, via chat, and then we will provide the feedback afterwards. In the meanwhile, you are also allowed to ask any questions, of course. Okay, there is a question popping up from the chat, and it says, what happens if a business partner does not have the resources or capability to connect via EDI? Rob, can you answer that question?
Okay, what if a business partner does not have the capability to connect via EDI? I think I already, let's say, touched upon it briefly, actually, let's say, during the presentation. But let me elaborate, let's say, on that a little bit, because it's part, actually, let's say, of the hybrid strategy, let's say, that we have. I think somewhere in this slide set, I had already, let's say, prepared some materials regarding this. Let me just bring that up while we're looking at this. So, if a little bit detailed than what we originally discussed. I think we went through the scenario that on the left-hand side you have your company, it has a single connection to KISS, and from there on it communicates via EDI to your EDI connected business partners. As we explained, let's say we use the UBL format, and because we use the UBL format, we use the UBL format to publish this same content in different ways. And as mentioned over here, for example, let's say on our web portal, which is connected to a database and which connects, let's say, which holds all the different messages, say the orders or the order responses. So if a business partner is not capable to work with EDI, let's take, for example, the situation of a forecast message. So typically, say our customer would like to exchange forecast messages with his suppliers. Supplier appreciates to have the forecast messages, it's nice for his business, but let's say on the other hand, maybe he does not have any electronic means to incorporate that forecast and provide feedback on that forecast. So this means that he could obtain the forecast information on the web portal, look at the forecast, maybe provide his feedback to say, well, I can do 200 in this week, but not 200 in the week following after, I can only do 100, and collaborate with that on the portal, while he could still, at the same time, either, let's say, do other processes like maybe a traditional purchase order process via EDI, or execute, let's say, all of his processes, let's say, on the portal. So we use the same UBL format to decouple it, let's say, in that way. And we try to make that as simple and as user-friendly as possible. I think I also have a screenshot to give you a brief look upon that, let's say, what it might, what it might look like. In Seeker, that it's very recognizable, actually, let's say, for any business partner. You see on the standard data in here, in this case, it's a purchase order. You see who the supplier is. You see where the purchase order was coming from, who the buyer is. So this is how you would expect it to see it in your own system, and you see the different line items on this purchase order. And then we have some very simple functions over here, like printing this order. Well, if you don't have an EDI system, you still may want to print it or have it as a CSV or in a file format, or you could actually, let's say, accept this order and provide, let's say, the confirmation that you are accepting it, or even, let's say, providing more advanced features like modifying a quantity or modifying a date, which eventually will end up in the same UBL format, in a meta format, and be posted back, of course, fully electronically to the customer. So regardless if the business partner works via EDI or works via the portal, my information is always coming in the same way, regardless of the capability of the business partner.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. Are there any other questions that you would like to ask? Feel free to ask them via microphone or chat. And I'll switch back to the slide with the question on it. We're actually already receiving some answers in here. We have a few saying, number 1, turnkey integration of your business partners. Number 3 is also favorable, reduce human resources. Number 4, easily plug in new trading partners and enable more electronic collaboration. And number 5 is also highlighted, to integrate new applications faster and simplify ERP and supply chain management consolidations. Do you recognize these points?
We thought that there were benefits in the first place, but it's always interesting. Well, what do people prioritize, and where are their priorities? So I think, let's say, you can think of many benefits, but it's interesting to have the feedback from people which benefits are really, let's say, relevant to them, let's say, at this point in time. And of course, let's say, a customer that's in an expansion mode in the scenario that you just explained, he may have different priorities than a customer which is in a cost consolidation and a cost cutting scenario, and is looking, let's say, mainly for ways to, for example, to reduce headcount, to reduce, let's say, manual work in that area. It depends on the mindset that he has. Otherwise, as people are integrating new processes, if they are challenged, some of our customers are challenged by pulling together their e-business strategy and combining their bricks strategy to their clicks strategy, which means that they may need to integrate to, for example, multiple web shops. May not be only their own web shop, but also to third-party web shops, and have that, let's say, integrate with the fulfillment model, where some of the fulfillment may come, let's say, indeed, let's say, from a wholesaler, or may actually come from their own warehouse. So these type of, let's say, multi-channel integration scenarios, they could also, let's say, have prioritize different, let's say, capabilities in that area. So it's interesting to see where you are in your process and what the background is of the question.
Excellent.
How are we doing for time?
Time-wise, yes, I think we are about to end the webinar. If there are no any further questions coming up via chat or microphone, so I would like to thank all the participants to join us today during this webinar. Of course, our speakers for today, Rob and Manpreet, many thanks for highlighting all the topic areas here. And we will make sure to send out the presentation and the recorded version in the coming days to you. And yeah, hopefully looking forward to see you again in the next webinar. Thank you and have a nice afternoon.
Thank you, Aruna.
Thank you, Aruna.
Thank you, participants.